Hello, everyone. Welcome to the initial podcast. And this is going to be a Stephen King related podcast for the most part. But if enough people like this podcast, we may branch out later down the road. And through the magic of technology, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me. And right now I'm talking to Hans. And what time is it for you, Hans?
Hello, it's 9 p.m. here in Sweden.
And you can all hear that Hans speaks English very good. He was a little worried about that, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. And I should mention that I'm in Canada. So we're kind of got our own little time travel portal going like Stephen King did in 11/22/63. We're going to get together hopefully on a regular basis and talk about Stephen King and some other fun stuff. So that is the purpose of the podcast. Of course, one of the big things that people have been curious about over the years is exactly how you pronounce the first part of the website's name. So Hans, why don't you tell people how you say your last name?
Yeah, Sweden we say Lilja, but I understand that's quite hard to pronounce in English.
Okay, so it's Lilja's Library?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
Very cool. So there you go, folks. One of the big mysteries has been solved for you right off the top of the podcast.
Where's fish? Where's fish? Where's fish? I don't know.
Hans, why don't you kick it off? Tell people a little bit about your background right now, and then I'll fill in people as to where I'm coming from.
Yeah, sure. I run the site Lilja's Library, and it's been around since '96. And what I try to do is keep everybody updated on the latest Stephen King news. And I hope I do a good job on that.
Well, considering that you're arguably the #1 Stephen King fan site on the internet, I think that you've accomplished that goal quite admirably. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and as for myself, my name is Lou Sitzma. You might know me on Twitter as Old Darth. I do a couple of podcasts. Currently, I'm doing a Fringe podcast and a Farscape podcast. I like to do podcasts about TV shows that have a lot of mythology or layers to them, because that gives you a lot of great material to discuss about and talk about on a weekly basis. And as to my Stephen King influence, I guess for me, the first book that I stumbled across was back in the 80s was The Shining. And I read that one, and I was immediately hooked. So I dug up his older works, and I read the other stuff that he had written before that, Carrie and whatnot. And also at that time, I read around 1983, I guess, I read the Dark Tower book. And I waited patiently over the next 25 to 30 years for that whole series to be published. So, of course, in the interim, I've read pretty well everything else that he's written as well. So that's where I come from as far as my Stephen King background goes. And, of course, for Lilja, that's even a more interesting story because of the website and everything that you've done with it, Lilja. So what I would like to do is allow people who haven't read your bio on the website or have your book, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. This is a chance for you to tell the listeners in your own words about yourself. So let's start before the website came. How did you get interested in Stephen King?
Well, I got a copy of Carrie in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
And from the start, I was hooked on him. Before that, I didn't read much books, mostly comics.
Okay.
But that got me reading, and I read Carrie, and Sweden was about 10 years after the US releases with the translations.
Okay.
So as they got translated, I read them. And since we were 10 years after, the books were released in Sweden many a year. So
right.
It was always a new Stephen King book coming out in Swedish. And eventually, around the time the third Dark Tower book was released, I had read every book that was translated to Swedish. So I started reading them in English.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to wait for the translations. And since then, I've continued to read them in English and not so much in Swedish anymore.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to ask you, if you've read a book in Swedish and then read it in English, is there much difference in the story, or does the story change for you at all when you read it between the two different versions?
No, the story is pretty much the same, but some of the translations aren't so good, so you keep getting stuck on and irritated on the translations instead of focus on the story. So I find it much better to read it originally in English.
Okay, very cool.
Plus, I don't want to wait for them to be translated.
Right, right. Okay, so you're reading all these Stephen King's books, and then something must have clicked on for you about starting a website.
Yeah, it was back in '96. Internet was pretty new. It was mostly text-based, and I got back to study at the university and got a chance to use internet there. And there weren't many sites about Stephen King who was any good, really. It wasn't that inspired me, but I thought that I'm going to start a site that has what I want to read.
Right.
So I started Lilja's library, and from the start it was a very simple page, and the latest news and the list of the books and just the basics, and then it grew and grew and grew, and today it is what it is.
So you started the site, and it started to gain momentum. How long before you started to notice that you were really picking up on the number of hits that your site was getting? Did that take a while, or?
Yeah, it did. I think it took into the early 2000s until I started to get recognition for it.
Okay.
And the more people know about it, the more people went to the site, and the more people that went to the site, the more people sent me news, and it grew and grew, and I got better connections, and it was a snowball effect.
Right.
Everything that made it grow more, and
cool. So there was no one like magic moment where all of a sudden your site was just like the King site? Like
no, not really, but
really? Okay.
No, I don't think you can pinpoint one moment, but one of the earliest moments that made me get many visitors was when Mick Garris did Desperation. And he was kind enough to let me have the first picture from the movie.
Oh, cool.
And during the day that I published that picture, the number of visitors went from usually around, at that time I think I had about 800-900 per day, and that day I had over 13,000.
Wow.
So that was a big day.
Yeah. So, and then from there, over the years, you've built up a lot of connections now. Like you're connecting with not only Stephen King, but you seem to have access to a lot of materials and promotional materials. And that, how did that all come about?
It was about at the time when the site grew. It's easier to get access when you have something behind you that you can show them and say that if you support me, I will put you on this site. So bigger the site was, the easier it got, and hopefully they think I do a great job with what I get. So it's a give and take.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I know that a lot of people visit your site, and we all really appreciate everything that you do there. And you do a good job, because it's one of the best places to find out about what Stephen King's up to. I'm wondering now that on a typical week, like how much time does it take for you to keep the site up?
It depends. Now it's pretty much self-go as far as maintenance going. So it pretty much depends on if it's a week with many news or if it's a slow week.
Right.
But I'm quite used to adding news to the site now, so it's pretty simple for me to do it. So it really doesn't take that much time. Maybe on an average week, maybe I spend about 2-3 hours on it.
Oh, okay. And then King's output has been pretty amazing, because like with just the last couple of years, especially, for somebody that was supposed to retire, he seems to be putting out more stuff now than he ever has been before.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
And that's made it easier for me as well, because during the slow times when there aren't much news, the number of visitors drop some. And when they were talking about the Dark Tower movie, you notice that more people were searching the internet for info. So it's based on what's happening as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Now, you've been doing this for over 15 years or more. There must be a lot of highlights for you. So could you maybe run through your top 5 that you really, really look back and say, wow, I have to pinch myself to believe that this is really happening?
Yeah, sure. The number 1 is my first interview with Stephen King.
Okay.
I had to work for that for 5 years to get okay for that.
Right.
And then it took another 6 months to find the time that it worked for both of us, and so on.
Right.
And then one evening the phone rang, and when I picked it up, hello, Steve here. That was magical. That
Did you
was
believe it, or did you think somebody was playing a joke on you?
no. It was so much preparation ahead, so I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
think anyone was pulling a joke on me. But that was amazing.
Right.
And I was extremely nervous, but he's such a down to earth man, so
Yeah.
it was almost like talking to a friend.
Cool.
And we ended up talking for 45 minutes,
Wow.
and so that's probably the time when I said that, okay, my life is complete. I can check in now and I'm done. So
Awesome. Okay.
and then actually a little while before this, I think it was, yes, it was, I met Stephen in London
Oh, yes, I remember.
when he was there for promoting Lee's story.
Mhm.
And the publisher had a publisher party, which I got invited to, and I got to shake his hand and take the picture and exchange a few words.
Right.
That was also magical.
Did he know who you were at that time?
I'm not sure if he knew who I was. I don't think so, really. It was
Okay.
so. It was all the time. It was people shaking his hands, and so I'm not. I wouldn't blame him if he didn't even know who he talked to that evening. There was someone shaking his hand all the time.
Right, right. Okay. So,
So,
any other big moments?
Yeah, my second interview with him, that I
Yes.
did, I think it was about a year later, also on the phone. That was also magical,
Mm-hmm.
and we spoke about 30 minutes that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are definitely my three. And of course, when I got the book version of the site released, that was a very strange feeling.
Right, right. Yeah, and I have a copy of the book here, actually. It's a very nice book, nicely illustrated by is it Glenn Shadmore?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So some great illustrations, Marv's in there throughout the whole book.
Yeah.
And it's an excellent book to read. And you got a nice pull quote from Peter Straub on the front cover too, which is pretty cool.
Yes, and one from Frank Darabont on back.
On the back. That's right. Yes. Wow. All the heavy hitters in the Stephen King universe.
Exactly. And if I'm going to brag, it was actually selected as Book of the Month in Fangoria, which was also very honoring.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's also a highlight.
Awesome. Other interests, other sites you run?
Yeah, well, I run a site where I review DVD movies.
Oh, okay.
DVD Critique. .se, together with my good friend Anders.
Okay.
And we review movies and have done so for the last, I think it's 5 years.
Okay. So are you doing DVDs or Blu-rays or both?
Both, yeah.
Both, okay. Do you like Blu-rays better than DVDs?
Yeah, I do. I think they give extra to the movies if you get the good ones, yeah.
All right. Okay, very cool. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what's new in the world of King. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, lately it almost seems like every week or every couple of months there's something new with Stephen King. Right now we've got four items that we're going to talk about. And let's start with Ghost Brothers. What are you hearing and thinking about that?
From what I've heard, it's very good. Most people seems to have enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I haven't seen much of it myself, since it's a bit too far to travel to see it.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get CDs pretty soon.
Yes. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm a big John Cougar fan as well as Stephen King fan. So that was kind of, when I heard the two of them were doing this together, that's like an all-star team of entertainment. Yeah. So I know that Bev Vincent, who is also a writer and a frequent King contributor, went to the red carpet premiere of it. Maybe down the road, or maybe on our next installment, I can ask him if he wants to come on and talk about it a bit. And that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it's fun that King is trying different things, I think.
Yes.
Like this musical, and I'm glad he doesn't only write books.
No,
it's fun that he tries different things.
Yeah, like he's gotten into comics quite a bit in a big way the last couple of years, which is really cool as well.
Yeah.
And on the book front, of course, we have The Wind Through the Keyhole is coming out shortly, and we're going to have a quick little review from you on that in a couple of minutes. But other things we have coming up are Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel of sorts. You want to tell people about what that book is all about?
Yeah, as some of you might know, it's the first chapter is included in the audio edition of Wind Through the Keyhole. And I got the chance to listen to it, and I must say that it's very promising. It tells the story of what happened after The Shining, what happened to Danny when The Shining ends, and how his life has progressed and what's become of him. So I actually think it could be a great book.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. I know kind of what it was an internet joke was people were saying they should have gotten Danny together with Charlie McGee from Firestarter.
Yeah, I think it was actually King himself who suggested that.
Yeah, you can imagine the children they would have. Wow.
Yeah.
That would be interesting, to say the
Yeah.
least. And just lately, we had a interview done by Neil Gaiman, another well-known writer, with King, and kind of slipped out what his next book is going to be. And you want to talk about that and the title?
Yeah, it's called Joyland, and we really don't know much about it, but it's about a serial killer on an amusement park. So it sounds promising so far.
Yeah.
But that's almost all we know about it. No publication date or anything. One can hope that it would slip in between Wind Through the Keyhole and Doctor Sleep, but that's not likely, but it would be nice.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that's going to be probably 2014 at the earliest, maybe even 2015. Who knows at this point?
Or maybe if Doctor Sleep comes early 2013, that it could be the fall book for 13.
Right. Yeah.
I think he mentioned that it was done in first draft, so
Yeah, it's just
it
boggles.
might happen in 2013.
Yeah, it just boggles my mind how much output he's had the last couple of years. It's
It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's great for us, of course. And on the movie front, this is very interesting. Carrie is getting remade again.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I must say I'm skeptical about it.
Okay.
They tried to do it as a TV movie, I think about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
which didn't work very well. And I really don't see the point of making a remake of it again. It feels like it's been done enough. So I would rather see something new as a movie, but I'll be seeing it when it comes out. I think it got a date March 15, if I'm not, next year.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, but I think if they do it right, it can be good. But
Yeah.
it's the remakes lately have been quite cheesy and not so good.
That's the big issue for me too. If you're going to do a remake, the studio has to put the appropriate amount of resources behind it in order for it to work. I'm quite happy with the actress that they've cast for it. She seems like an up and comer, and the director also has got a solid body of work behind her. And for myself, I watched the original Carrie just recently. And I still enjoy the movie, but it is definitely a dated movie.
Yeah.
It's made in a different era with different cinema sensibilities.
Yeah.
I think if it's done properly, this is a coming-of-age story that's a kind of a universal theme that can be told over and over again. And because the other movie is so old, there's a whole new generation of potential fans out there that could really enjoy this. And if it's done properly, like we just seen with the Hunger Games, has really struck a chord with a wide audience. If you can make that same kind of awareness across demographics, I think that a movie like this could really be a big hit. But it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I feel that if you're going to do a remake, it has to bring something new that you don't have in the original, because otherwise it's pointless.
Right.
And as you mentioned, one thing that this version could have is that it's more modern and maybe better effects and everything, and that might be enough, but it has to be something new compared to the old one. Otherwise you can just watch the old one.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So before we move on to Wind Through the Keyhole, this is a question I should have asked you back in your background. With the Stephen King books, which books do you tend to favor? Do you like the more horrific ones, or do you like mix, or do you like the more character-based stories?
I actually think I like the one with good characters the most.
Okay.
If the characters tend to make the story itself solid as well.
Exactly.
So I think that if you have that base with a solid character, I think it works. I can make an example for you. I read Mile 81, which is a very good story, I think. But I got a feeling, and I know I maybe I'm the only one thinking this, because I haven't gotten much people to agree with me. But I feel that the kids are too mature for their ages. I feel like they are making decisions and react in a way that, at least to my knowledge, kids in that low age doesn't. So I feel that is affecting the story as a whole.
Yeah.
For me, and that's a typical, if it's missing something in the characters, it might affect the story. So the characters are what's most important, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember there was just an interview with King recently, but he's talking about he was younger when writing about kids. It was a lot easier when his children were still very small. And now he has to kind of do that through his grandchildren. So it's more difficult for him to write about kids, which is a big thing for King because a lot of his stories feature kids so prominently. So that was very interesting. What would you be like your top 3 or 4 or 5 Stephen King books?
That's always hard, but one of my all-time favorites is actually The Long Walk. I think it's just the thought of making a book about people who's only walking and making it good makes me love that book.
You're right.
But it's probably the book that I read the most times, actually.
Interesting.
Probably because it's pretty thin as well compared to it and the other books. But that if I would have to choose just one, I think that would be my favorite.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
But then, of course, I like It, The Stand. And, of course, I like the Dark Tower books. But those I want I want all of them. I don't want to read just one of them. So I tend to judge them as one when I compare what book I want to read.
Sure.
So I think you got to read them all.
Yeah.
And not just pick one.
Yeah, I tend to read the whole series over every couple of years, which that's the only other one I've done that with is Lord of the Rings. So those two are kind of like, those are like bookend kind of stories to me. I like my favorite movie and one of my favorite stories is The Shawshank Redemption. So I always come back to that one every once in a while as well. So
that's very good. I like, speaking about short story, like Secret Window.
Right.
That's a brilliant story.
Yeah.
The movie it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not as good as the story, but it works. It works.
Yeah.
But the story I really like.
Yeah, a story that I really like, and I know they've made it once as one of the creep shows is The Raft. But I'd love to see that one redone with better effects because I think that's a really creepy, powerful little short story.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I love that one. Okay, so let's turn to Wind Through the Keyhole. I haven't read it yet. Waiting for it to come out. I know that you've read it, and to make sure that we don't scare anybody away, you're just going to give your general impressions about the book. There's not going to be any spoilers. So, what did you think of the story, and how does it fit in with the whole Dark Tower series?
Yeah, it's actually, it doesn't affect the main characters, Roland and Eddie and Susanna, as much as I thought it would. They are almost like second character in this story.
Okay.
So you could read it without having read the rest of the Dark Tower series.
Okay.
But it helps to have all the info from the 7 books, of course, when you read it. But if there's someone out there who hasn't read the books, they can still read this one without being too frustrated.
Good. And what did you think of the story overall?
Yeah, it's a very good story. It's a well-told story.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how much I'm going to tell about it.
Yeah, no, that's okay. How many pages is it?
Let's see, I actually have it in.
Oh, now you're making us all jealous.
309 pages.
Wow, that's small for
including
Stephen
the afterword. Yeah.
Okay, well, it sort of sounds to me almost like Wizard and Glass, where all the characters are secondary characters as we do the flashback episode for Roland.
Yeah. It's kind of a flashback for Roland this time as well.
Okay.
With the exception that he tells a story to Eddie and Susanna and Jake. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm going to say much more than that.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. No, sounds like a good tease to me.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear what our listeners are thinking about the covers. Mm-hmm. I'm very interested in different covers.
Okay.
And the US and the UK, as they could be seen on my site or anywhere on the internet, are quite different.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to hear comments on which one they like the most.
Okay, did you hear that, listeners? Send your comments. Post your comments on Lilja's site or his Facebook page, and you can go to the library site and you'll see the links for that. As for myself, I prefer the US edition, but I'm interested to hear which one you like better.
I think I'm going to go with the US cover.
Okay.
The painting on it is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty slick. That tiger looks pretty wicked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the UK version might have the strength that it's more like the earlier covers.
Yes.
It's more like it's connected to them
Mm-hmm. Is
in
it?
the same style and so it might be better if you want to have a complete set to have all those.
Yeah.
As usual, they release the earlier books with a similar cover, and then a new book comes and it has a totally different covers.
Yeah.
And they release everybody again with the same covers, and
Yeah, those
so
marketing
it's
guys.
hard to get a
Yeah, those marketing guys always out to find a new way to get more money out of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if I have to tell you also, if you are planning to get one of the versions of Wind Through the Keyholes, please consider the audio edition.
Yes.
If for nothing else, you get one extra disc with the first chapter of Doctor Sleep, and that alone is worth checking that one out.
Cool. And Stephen King does the narration too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have our audio tapes of he read the first Dark Tower book. I remember that, and I had that, and I really like his reading. And one of my all-time favorite audiobooks, if not my favorite, I think, is his reading of Bag of Bones. I just think that's a fantastic audiobook too. If somebody's looking to get into audiobooks, they should really look into the Bag of Bones audiobook as well, because Stephen King reads that, and there's great little incidental music that relates to Sarah Tidwell that really brings that whole atmosphere of 1930s and 20s and to life. So and it makes it a creepier story too. So it's just an amazing audiobook. And anytime Stephen King reads, I just love listening to his voice. I think he's a great reader.
Yeah, he narrated the 3 first Dark Tower books as well.
Okay.
I think they are only released on cassettes.
Yes. Yeah, I have them all on cassettes. I have to figure out a way to get them on to my computer.
Yeah.
Technology marches on, and I can't keep up with it. But
exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm your #1 fan. There's nothing to worry about. You're gonna be just fine.
Okay, so one of the things that we hope that we can also do on a regular basis with this podcast is mailbag section of the podcast, and we're going to call this Marv's Mailbag in honor of the mascot from Lilja's library site. And I'm just going through what I have here on the site. Glenn Wrights has a couple of questions here. I don't know if you can answer these for him or not, but the first one he has is, what is the state of the Stephen King collecting market?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty broad subject, right?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, limited editions are selling. Wind to the Keyholes are released in limited from Grant and limited from Hodder and Stoughton, and not Scribner. They are not releasing one, but they are different limited, so they are being released. But personally, I feel like earlier when there was limited, it was done by the smaller company, and it felt like they were more doing it for the love of a nice book.
Mm-hmm.
And now it seems like it's been taken over a little bit by the bigger companies, and they are doing it more. It feels like they are doing it more to make an extra buck.
Okay.
Than actually. Often it looks like it's the same book but with a signature.
Right.
And earlier it was a totally different book and different binding, and I don't know. I'm not that into collecting limiteds because my finances doesn't allow it. But
yeah,
but that would also be interesting if any of our listeners have any opinions of that. But that's my feeling, that limited aren't so limited anymore.
Right. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them either, and I know King really doesn't think highly of limited books either, right? He just thinks books are to be read, not to be looked at. So
yeah.
Glenn has another question here. I think you've answered this already. He says, "What is Stephen King's best book in your opinion?"
Yeah, as I said, The Long Walk, The Dark Tower. Often the latest book you've read is one of the favorites.
Yeah.
It takes some time for it to, you have to process it, and it has to melt into the rest of his books, and you can't actually put it in its right place until it's maybe half a year after you read it and processed it.
Right. To answer some of these other questions, do we think Joyland's going to be a good book? We don't know yet, Showtime Circus, but we always hope that it will be.
Yeah.
Ebright says, your English is far better than my Danish, ? And I guess if you listen to this podcast, you're going to find you're going to get the answer to that question. And I would be guessing, but I would say that yes, Hans's English is probably a lot better than most of our Danish.
Yeah, and I must say, it's very funny that he says Danish since I live in Sweden, but It's not
Yeah.
quite the same. It's our
Close.
neighbors.
You're right. Swedish is different than Danish. Yes. Okay. How did we create the website, and how did you communicate before Facebook? Well, we talked about the website communicating before Facebook.
Yeah.
What did you just send out emails or?
Yeah, actually, I didn't start Facebooking. I'm not sure. I think I might have had the Facebook site for maybe a year or maybe a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually a bit skeptical about Facebook because I didn't want to make a Facebook page about me.
Right.
Because I feel that I'm not that interesting to read about. So I wanted to make it about Stephen King and Lilja's library if I was going to do some. And I got some suggestions from readers and got started. And apparently people thought that a Facebook page was very good and started to following it. And so it kept growing. And today it works very fine. Every news is published there as well. So hopefully it will give the readers of the site a simple way to know that okay, something has been updated and some news has been spread, so they know when they should go to the site and check it out. And also Twitter.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Yeah, I'm more a fan of Twitter than Facebook myself, but I know a lot of people. Facebook has become very popular with a lot of people. It's not something that I particularly like myself, but I like Twitter better because it acts like a funnel. It sends me information about things that I like. But
yeah, I think Facebook has the advantage of you can post more. You can post
Longer.
a picture easier, and you can add more text, while Twitter has some limitation there, and it's hard to formulate yourself in 140 words, I think it is,
right,
or letters. But it's a good way to get fast and short flashes of news out, definitely. But it's hard if you follow people. You might get if there's a discussion and you get from only the one side of the discussion, it could be hard to follow in sometimes, I feel.
Right.
So,
okay.
But they work together. They complement each other, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've seen Facebook help your site get more hits, I assume.
Yeah. It goes both way. The site brings people to Facebook, and Facebook brings people to the site. So it works very, very good together.
Cool. And then we have JJM ask a whole bunch of podcast questions. He wants to know when it will be available and where, and through iTunes. And hopefully I'll have it up ready to go by Friday at the latest. And yes, there will be an iTunes version. I'll be posting it up on Blip TV, and I assume, Hans, that you'll be putting a post up here as well where people can get it through there. So if you want to watch it at your computer, you can put it through Blip TV, or if you want to listen to your iPod, we'll be putting an iTunes audio version up as well. So
and I put links on the site to every site.
So keep your eyes peeled for it. We'll have it out definitely by the end of the week, which would be the 20th. I believe that would be correct, because we're recording today is the 14th. Yeah, so by the 20th at the latest. So just be a little bit patient, and you'll see it soon in several locations.
It's a pretty funny question, because when they listen to this, they already know how they're going to get it. So
yeah. But that's it's kind of another time. It's another time travel paradox.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going over to Facebook. Can you answer about how to publish a book? And I guess that's in reference to your book.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in the position to help anybody with tips on how to get a book published. As for my book, I was actually contacted by Cemetery Dance and asked if I would put the interviews and the reviews that I had done together and released them as a book.
Right.
And at first I was a bit skeptical because I thought, who on earth would want to read them in a book when they find them on the site?
Yeah.
But of course it was very flattering to get the offer. So
sure.
I thought, sure, let's go ahead and try. And so far it's been received very well. It's not many who has complained on it too much.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I've got it. I think it's great. It's nice because it's all in one physical location. Like, you can read the articles on your site, but you have to go through all the archives and whatnot. And here you have it all in one easy to find location, which is great. Okay.
The only problem with it is that it's aging, and
that's always a problem.
Not that up to date already.
Yeah.
Anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess you'll have to do volume 2.
Yeah, that would be fun.
There you go, Cemetery Dance, if you're listening. Volume 2 of Lilja's Library. Michelle asks about what sparked your interest in King. We've already answered that. Georgette Stamble says, in Misery, when Paul Sheldon was finished with writing a book, he would have a cigarette and a glass of champagne. Are there any rituals, whether before writing a book or after, that you practice on a regular basis?
Well, I don't write that many books. I've written this one, and there's a movie quiz book coming out from Cemetery Dance that I wrote with Kevin Quigley and Brian Freeman.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure if it's going to be published late this year or early next year.
Okay.
But that as far as my book publishing experience goes. So I don't have a smoke or a glass of champagne now.
No. A glass, a swig of peppermint schnapps or something, whatever the Swedish drink is, I don't know, but
yeah,
or a beer.
Yeah, a beer would be fine, but no, I didn't have it to celebrate the book.
Alrighty, so then the rest are just saying thanks for doing the podcast, and they're looking forward to hear it. So to Carla, Clifton, Julie Moffat, thank you very much for the comments. And I think that's everything we're going to do for the first podcast. We've already gone longer than I thought we were going to, and which is great. I'm going to leave you with one last question, Hans, and that is the Dark Tower books. Do you want them made as a movie or not?
It's a hard question. My first reaction was no on the latest movies, because I think they are great as books and they can't ever be done as good in a movie. But when I think about it and think about how well they did Lord of the Rings, I'm actually quite curious to see what they can do with it. The problem that I think is, as the original plan was to do movies and TV series and make them first a movie, then a TV series, and a movie and TV series. And the first problem would be to get the actors to commit to such a huge time span that it would take to do that. And as a non-American, it would also be a problem for me because TV series doesn't arrive here at the same time that they do in the US. So it would be very different to see a movie that might maybe premieres like a month after the US. And then the TV series might drag on for a couple of years before it reaches Sweden. So I think from an international standpoint, it would be a disaster for the fans to have it released that way.
Yes, that I never really thought of that, but yeah.
It's a very interesting way to put it out, so I'm conflicted, but I think the best thing would be to let it alone if I had to decide for one.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm kind of like King. He says, the books are always up there on the shelves, so if whatever they want to put up on the screen is a totally different, separate thing from the books. I really do like the idea of doing a movie and then TV series. I understand from your perspective it's difficult because of getting it out. They would have to do like worldwide releases of the TV series or look at different mediums because you'd be undercutting your market once the first TV series was out and the second movie came out and you hadn't seen the TV series in between. Yeah. But what I would like about that idea is that because in movies, even Lord of the Rings, which did a fantastic job of catching the high points, you lose a lot of the subtleties and character beats that because you're trying to hit the widest audience as possible. And with a TV series, you can slow down and do much more character interactions, which are really important with Stephen King material. Anytime something of his has been adapted, like look at Bag of Bones, 4 hours miniseries, which really turned out to only about 2 hours and 40 minutes of actual airtime. But they had to cut a lot out of that story in order to fit it in the miniseries, and I think the miniseries suffered because of it. So I would like to see it done. I mean, like you said, Lord of the Rings just a fantastic job, and they could hit some of the moments. Like I just try to picture some of these moments from the book being done cinematically, and I get goosebumps thinking about some of the scenes. So I would love to see that, but.
I think the right way to do it would be to let someone like HBO or AMC
ideally
do it as a TV series all the way.
Yeah. Or the big problem with the story is 7 books with Jake. He would age over the filming of those. You'd have to change his age, and that kind of takes away the power of his story too. So maybe an animated version would be another way to go. I don't know, but yeah, because like with the Hunger Games, they had to age up the characters, and with Bag of Bones, they did the same thing. They aged up the characters too. Yeah. And I assume that was because it was such a short shooting schedule. They couldn't take the time to work with a younger child actor. Yeah. Characters are so important in King's story, and you lose those little subtleties, and it kind of undermines the story. Yeah.
And the 7 books take place during, as you say, such a long time, so it would be hard to manage to film them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so there you go, folks. That's our first Lilja and Lou podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if for nothing else, if this is the only one, I just really wanted to take this opportunity for the fans to hear your voice, Hans, because you've done such a great job over the years. It's always nice to hear somebody as opposed to just reading them. So I hope the fans appreciate that, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It was very fun, and I hope our listeners will comment on this podcast and let us know what they think, even if they think it stinks. I want to know every comment.
Yeah, same here. We're thick-skinned. We can take it.
Yeah.
So Hans, I want to say it's been a pleasure to meet you. I hope we can do some more of these down the road. And take care.
Yeah.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you very much. So you want to say so long to everybody?
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. I hope we'll be back. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
So long and scene.